Now, just a little warning before we begin. There's going to be some major spoilers in this video for the 4th episode of Ahsoka, so if you have not seen that one yet and you don't want anything ruined, you're going to want to click away now. Though that said, I actually want to start this one out by going back several years, back to that time after The Force Awakens came out, a time that was actually one of my favorite periods as a Star Wars fan, and not just because that's when my YouTube journey began, but because by and large the fan base was at peace and just enjoying the return of Star Wars to the big screen, and they were focused on theorizing about what would come next. In fact, the fanbase spent 2 long years theorizing about such things as Rey's parents, what's the deal with Snoke, what's Luke been up to on that island, and just who the heck are the Knights of Ren. And in that time we got some really good, interesting theories, some that, yeah, probably would have been pretty cool had they come to pass, even if they seemed unlikely. Again, all around it was just fun to spend that 2 years that we had to wait anyway, by thinking about, talking about, and hearing possibilities that people were coming up with. I mean, what else were we going to do? Not talk about any of it? It wasn't too unlike, to use a sports analogy, because I do love my sports analogies, but it wasn't too unlike how sports fans talk about either the season to come, or a big upcoming game, or how a player might do next year. You very much know it's all speculation. You know nothing is likely to turn out how you predict, which is, of course, part of the fun and part of the reason you do watch sports, because you don't know the outcome ahead of time. Nevertheless, talking about all of it is a way to share your passion for the sport with your fellow fans. However, those happy times within the Star Wars fanbase didn't exactly last. Instead, they pretty much came to a screeching halt with The Last Jedi, a movie that, shall we say, just didn't resonate with a lot of fans for many, many different reasons. Though there were many out there who claimed the main reason so many didn't like it was because their favorite theory didn't come to pass, that they had fallen in love with what they wanted to happen, so much so that they couldn't accept what did happen. And though I do think, to a degree, that's true for some fans, that they were indeed kind of disappointed that what they were hoping for 2 years didn't happen, I'd still argue that if the movie and reveals within it had been excellent, most everyone would have forgotten about their favorite theory and just been happy that they enjoyed or loved the movie we got. Not unlike, going back to the sports analogy, but not unlike the game not exactly turning out the way you thought. You may be kind of disappointed that your favorite player had an off game or got injured or something else didn't go quite as you expected, but it was still a win, and at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. The most important thing for a Star Wars fan is good movies, not their theories panning out.
Another happy landing.
But for many, instead of getting a win with that movie that just didn't happen to play out how you thought, in that particular case with The Last Jedi, it seemed like the film or its creator had been intent on not only not answering a lot of the mysteries, like he actively avoided them, like the Knights of Ren not appearing at all in the movie, but the ones he was all but forced to answer, he intentionally did so in the most unsatisfying way possible. That the intent was to, yeah, subvert expectations rather than in any way give fans something they wanted. It was almost like your team seeming to intentionally throw the game or purposely not playing as well as they could, or just playing uncharacteristically bad. And so yeah, again in that case, I do think there was a degree of truth that some fans were disappointed that their theories didn't come to pass, but it was exacerbated by the film seemingly trying to go the opposite direction of what a lot of fans wanted. Though I should mention that actually The Last Jedi was written well before The Force Awakens even came out. It was written in 2014, though the final shooting script was completed roughly a month or so after the release of The Force Awakens, meaning there wasn't a ton of time to actually change things in order to spite the fans who were putting their theories out there on the internet. I mean, it's possible he changed some things, maybe a lot of things, but I think it's more along the lines that Rian Johnson never really had any interest or intent to answer any of those questions from The Force Awakens, not in a way that might be satisfying to fans. It was always about making the movie he wanted to make.
Bold decisions like you did in this movie, how worried are you that you might also piss off people that are...
Can I just say, though, a lot of times I would say to Ryan, we got to think about the fans. Yeah. And he said, no, we got to think about the story, and we got to think about our movie, which
But I digress, and what has of course brought this topic up yet again is the Marrok reveal in the latest episode of Ahsoka, and by reveal I mean pretty much that there was no reveal, that Marrok was just Marrok. He was, we can assume I think, he was an Inquisitor who died at some point and was reanimated by Morgan Elsbeth, no more no less. Though I'm sure probably in a comic or something we'll get his backstory someday. Either way, there are quite a few people right now who seem to be upset about all this, who thought for sure Marrok had to be something or somebody cool that we knew from somewhere else. They'll say we were purposely misled by Dave Filoni, that why put a mask or helmet on him in the first place if you don't want people to think he had a secret identity. And to that I'd point out that, well, many characters in the Star Wars galaxy just wear helmets. It's kind of a thing. Not to mention, if it wasn't for the helmet, the one secretive thing about him would have been revealed. That again, being he has some type of Night Sister magic and has, it seems, been reanimated by it. Something not too unlike what we saw with Savage Opress in the Clone Wars. In other words, yeah, there was a reason for the helmet. It just wasn't for the reason many thought or hoped. But unlike with, say, The Last Jedi, I don't think there was any type of intended subversion of expectations by Dave Filoni. Even the StarWars.com website told us that Marrok was just an Inquisitor. All it did was leave out the part about him already being dead and animate it so it could be a surprise, which it certainly still was. And the thing is, with this reveal, it fits perfectly with the story. It very much makes sense for it. And one of the keys to a good theory, maybe the most important part, which is often ignored, is the implementation of it, or how you're going to pull it off and why. I mean, it's easy to put out there that Marrok is Starkiller to make a theory video about it, but it's not so easy to make it work in reality or work in the show. And so my biggest issue with, say, Marrok being Starkiller was always, what exactly would it mean for this story? How would he fit into this? How would dropping that character into this story, into the middle of it, work both for the Ahsoka series and do justice to such a fan-favorite character? And honestly, I didn't see an answer to either of those questions, not one that could easily be implemented anyway, not without twisting the story to serve him suddenly. Which is something fans have complained about before with different characters, right? And so instead, as I was saying a moment ago, Marrok turned out to be something that actually fit into and served the story nicely. He again turned out to be Night Sister magic, essentially. He probably got a whole lot of people who knew nothing about the Night Sisters wondering what the hell was that green smoke stuff. It introduced them to the idea of reanimating the dead, which is probably a very foreign concept to Star Wars, and is also probably a tactic Morgan, will use again in the future or by the end of the series. So basically, instead of Marrok turning out to be a character that would take focus away from the story that we were getting and would require his own level of explanation, he turned out to simply serve the story, which isn't to say you can't be a little disappointed that no, it wasn't Starkiller or something like that he wasn't brought into the new canon and played by Sam Witwer himself, which, yes, that would have been awesome to see, I can't deny that. But as long as the series turns out to be good, and I thought this most recent episode was a step in the right direction, a big step in the right direction, I don't think it's going to matter if you were right or wrong about Marrok. You'll just be happy, or should be happy, that it was good and you liked it. And in an odd sort of way, how much you liked it in the end is going to make you feel better or worse about how much time you may have spent talking about it or speculating or theorizing about it, even if you were dead wrong in the end. And so no, I don't really think there's much harm in theorizing or speculating as long as fans always remember to have fun with it and that a good deal of the time, most of the time, you're going to be dead wrong. Or that the best theory you heard on YouTube will be dead wrong. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing that we can't predict or easily see coming every twist and turn in the story. Though that said, I do think sometimes we do dig a little too deep or look in the wrong places for mysteries or clues. The problem is we start with the assumption that the writer of the story is even trying to be that intricate or secretive, that the intent is to leave tiny little clues all over the place so that the mystery they have created can be pieced together and solved even before the reveal, which is never coming. And oftentimes, the writer doesn't even realize what they're doing will be perceived as a clue, or that it seemingly alludes to something more, something hidden, something bigger. I mean, I highly doubt Dave Filoni thought that putting a helmet on an Inquisitor would be seen as a clue, and if he did, he probably didn't think it would go quite this far. And just go back to The Force Awakens, how almost literally every scene or line of dialogue, every little detail in that movie, right down to Rey's accent even, it was looked at and analyzed for possible clues, as was every page of every book outside the film that had anything remotely to do with the movie, and even those that didn't. And like I was just saying, that was assuming it was even meant to be this big mystery in the first place, and that there were clues to be found everywhere. When, for example, I just looked at the most blatant thing in the movie to come up with my theory that Rey's parents were nobody. A theory a lot of people absolutely hated, mind you, but I literally just listened to what the movie actually told me and I ran with that. It was that simple.
The belonging you seek is not behind you, it is ahead.
Basically, I just figured that since the movie told me her story was ahead and not behind her, that where she came from was going to be irrelevant, or supposed to be. Then I factored in that this was Disney, that their message with Rey was likely going to be to every young girl out there that it didn't matter who you are or where you came from, you can be special, the whole wish upon a star thing. And so, well, I just added those two simple elements together and thought they're going to make her parents no one special, and for a little while anyway, I was right. Which isn't to say that is what I wanted it to be. I personally thought it made more sense to just make her a Skywalker or a Solo, that the main character of a Skywalker trilogy should be related to the Skywalker family. But again, I looked at the obvious and ignored the million obscure little clues or details that weren't actually clues, and that's what I came up with. Just like I looked at Marrok, helmet and all, and thought, it's just a helmeted Inquisitor, but I was actually wrong. He was a dead, reanimated helmeted Inquisitor, which was a surprise to be sure. Anyway, to wrap this up, I think speculating and theorizing is usually harmless fun and is a way for us fans to spend that time between pieces of the story, between movies or episodes, whatever it might be. It gives us something to do, something to talk about. It brings people together and unites them around something they love. And as long as whatever that story is ends up being good, which is what it should be, right? But as long as it's good, I think favorite theories will quickly fade away and become talk of appreciation about what we just got. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about theorizing and speculation. Do they ruin things? Do they build up unrealistic expectations? Or is it all just part of the fun? Is it just part of being a fan? Whatever you think, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.